All right, guys. So I just recently watched this video and I thought that it was very pertinent, and I actually agree with a vast majority of it. So this is from Adam Kinzinger. I may have mispronounced that. He was he's an American politician, political commentator, and former Air National Guard officer. He's a member of the Republican Party, served as a U.S. representative from Illinois from 2011 to 2023. Representing Illinois' 11th congressional district and later Illinois' 16th congressional district. He's 47 years old. Let's see what he's got to say.
So if you spend any time on X or any social media, you've probably seen this idea of a civil war. Is America going to be in a civil war? In some cases, people calling for a civil war. Especially after the tragic shooting of Charlie Kirk, you would see many figures, even Elon Musk, saying, you know, almost invoking a war. I want to discuss that because this isn't a new phenomenon. Uh, I can remember when I got elected, actually, back in 2010, somebody coming up to me and asking me if I was preparing for the upcoming Civil War. In fact, probably since the Civil War, people have always said we're on the edge of it. But I want to talk who's doing this. First off, I think most of the people that push this idea of civil war are people that have never served, that have never seen combat. But more importantly, I think they're people that are searching in their life for meaning. And this idea of civil war to them feels like you're belonging to a side and you're going to go out and fight for those values. But I want to talk about what a civil war really entails. So, a significant number of people that I see calling for a civil war, predicting one, I don't think would last very long. Just because Walgreens would run out of their insulin.
Completely agree with all of this. In fact, well, I'm not one of the people that have been calling for a civil war. I think it's a little early for something like that, and that's a little bit extreme. Um, So he's specifically referring to the people that have been calling for a civil war. And I do agree that nearly all of the people calling for a civil war just really do not understand what that would entail. These are some really ignorant people. Um, Even myself, right now, I believe that if push came to shove and everything just went to shit, that I would have little to no issue taking lives in order to protect myself and loved ones. And yes, to some extent, meaning is involved here. Oh, wait, let me finish that point first. Um, but there is a high likelihood, just on basic statistics of understanding the psychology of people who end up going to war and what it does to them. I'm probably wrong. It would probably fuck me up beyond repair, and it would not be worth it. I'll continue on this in a moment. Let's go ahead and let him continue.
Or whatever heart medicine they need, or medicine for their blood to keep their blood thin. In fact, that's the whole point. The creature comforts we rely on today will not be here in the case of a civil war. So I want to discuss some of those. Number one, I already mentioned your medicines. There's not going to be anybody working at the penicillin factory. So what happens when you get an infection, a sinus infection, say? What is that? Well, you probably won't survive it. What happens when, I don't know, let's say you want to turn on the lights? Do you think the people will be working at the electric company? Do you think the water folks will go to work? Do you think they're going to pick up trash anywhere? Think about this. Anytime when you talk about a civil war, the reality is people have to go to work to get the things you want, and nobody's going to go. So you want to call your grandma across the country, see if she's doing okay. Or you want to call your parents, see if they're doing okay. Well, guess what? The cell towers are probably down by now. So not only now can't you get your medicine, not only probably you have lost your lights, not only can't you get water, so good luck finding a stream or iodine pills to make sure that you don't get sick from it. Now you can't talk to your loved ones. Maybe you can drive to see them, right? Well, maybe for the first week or so, because there might be some fuel left in the country. But look, probably there'd be a run on the fuel lines anyway. So the idea that you could go get gas is just simply not going to happen. So now you're stuck to walking or riding a bike. But do you really want to walk or ride a bike any kind of distance in the middle of a civil war? Some of you have kids out there. Can you imagine what happens when your kid gets sick and you want to take them to the emergency room or the urgent care? Or you're concerned about a cough they have, or maybe they come down with something, and now all of a sudden you can't go to the hospital. Because I got to tell you, doctors aren't going to just go into work during a civil war. Maybe some will. Maybe some hospitals will be open, but keep in mind, they're going to be running off generators using fuel that probably they can't get anyway. You know, this whole talking on the internet thing and me recording a video, that's gone. I mean, if you think you're going to have access to the internet, that the fiber lines are going to keep coming, and that, you know, the repair folks are going to come out and fix it when that gets broken, that's not going to happen. So now all of a sudden, for so many people that beg for civil war, that have their community based on the internet, they're going to be cut off from that community anyway. So you have people that are going to drop from not having the medicine they need. You're going to have all your creature comforts gone. And now what are you left with? You're left with the hope that you might be able to survive a fight against your fellow Americans. Because why? You didn't like their view on transgenders. Or because you didn't like that Cracker Barrel changed its name or changed its signage. You don't like the fact that, I don't know, all these different things you don't agree with. Maybe the tax rates are too high. Maybe they're too low.
I like that while politicians like Donald Trump are just immediately after like the Kirk deal, he immediately, before any information was known at all, he started like automatically blaming the left. The most irresponsible thing any leader could possibly do. He went straight to it, and that tells you all you need to know about him. But Adam Kinzinger, regardless of his views, I know very little about him. In fact, the shit that I pulled up at the beginning here was literally just pulled up right before. Like, I've never heard of the guy, know nothing about him. But regardless of his position on issues, I like how, in order to use like analogies or examples of trying to get his point across, he specifically targeted right-leaning things instead of flaming the opposing side or fucking pouring fuel on the fire, so to speak. That's important to note.
All of that pales in comparison to the discomfort and pure horror of what a civil war would bring. And guess what? At the end of all of it, let's even say your side wins. What are you going to get? Well, the rest of your life is going to be spent trying to rebuild what you had before the civil war you incited came. Maybe your kids will survive. I hope. You're going to know a lot of people that don't. And so ultimately, the differences that we have, that we think are just so big that we have to fight and kill each other, they're not that big. In fact, they're perfectly set for a democracy, for a place where people can disagree and fight their battles, but fight it at the ballot box.
Minor disagreement. Well, I think it's a major disagreement, but still, we do not have a democracy. This is not a democracy. And then it's very common. It happens all the time. People go, especially people on the right, like to go, no, it's not a democracy. It's a republic. A republic is a form of democracy. I'm trying not to attack people. It's hard to do sometimes. But like, this is basic. This is very basic. A republic is where you have representatives that are elected to represent the people. The people are, if they're being represented, their views, their values, their opinions are represented by the representatives based on like in the form of the policies that are pushed forth and all that. That does not happen in the United States, which means this is not a democracy. This is part of the problem, and I'll go further into it in a moment.
Fight it in the Capitol, not through gunpoint, not through killing, not through murder. The people that are pushing this either don't know what they're saying or they're lonely and looking for meaning, and this is it.
I agree with this. Some of it is, well, especially the more extreme, like the extremist type people, probably the Tyler Robinson, that whole situation, that's probably a big part of it. You're absolutely right. So I'm deciding whether or not to cover this at the end or not. So when it comes to meaning, yes, some people are desperately searching for it and they're just latching onto it like a form of tribalism, but sometimes it's organic. It's actually their values, right? It would have happened even if they didn't have rhetoric like screaming in their ear from like all different directions and like they're in an echo chamber, etc. It's just organic. These are your ideals. Now, in the latter case, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, and that's absolutely natural. Um, I'm definitely not condoning any sort of civil war. I'll continue on this in a moment. Let me let him finish.
Let's not fall into that trap. There won't be a civil war in this country because we're not going to let that happen. Because ultimately, at the end, the cost will far outweigh any perceived benefit. And by the way, by the end of that war, you won't care about the issues that you get so irate about today. Oh, yeah, Fox News is not going to be on TV either. So you'll have a little detox. Anyway, everybody, right, left, center, let's lay off the Civil War talk. We can talk about the people that are talking about it. But those that are begging for it, cheering for it, they have no idea what they're talking about.
Completely agree on that last point. Let me take this down. Okay. So I'll speak for myself just as an example. And I will kind of bring up some points that I did recently in the There's No Such Thing as a Right-Wing Christian video. So I do not want a civil war, but it's important to live in reality. I don't have control over everyone in the United States. If things just continually get heated and more heated, then it's going to happen whether I like it or not. And being prepared for that is the best thing you can possibly do. As I said before, being proactive is a whole lot better than being reactive in almost any situation you can think of. So, yeah, that's what I got to say about that. On the meaning thing, it's highly subjective. So there are people that are just seeking meaning in any way they can possibly get it. And like it's a form of tribalism and like standing for their group, but it's not really about values. But then there's people who's all about their values. They never break from their values. And that's what leads them to a particular group. It's very hard to separate those two because it can happen either way. And it's not easy to tell where an individual like got there, like how they reached that point. But I can use myself as an example. I do everything I possibly can to make sure that I'm not in an echo chamber. I go out of my way to watch news from all across the fucking aisle, everywhere. I purposefully jump all over the place. I watch Fox News, Newsmax, fucking like Glenn Beck, Ben Shapiro, people like Andrew Tate. I like to get a feel for the environment of all different sides, not just right and left, but like groypers, uh, neo-Nazis. I like to feel like I'm informed, and this comes at a cost. It, it can drive you fucking crazy, but I think it's important, and I do so on purpose. Not everybody's going to do that, and I'm not even saying everyone should do that, but I think that it's useful, at least within moderation. So back to the meaning thing. Like, I believe that the things that we should be focusing on is not just what benefits me, not what benefits like to me what matters is focusing on issues that are dealing with things that serve one, the greatest good, the bigger picture, and two, the most in need of assistance or our attention, however you want to look at it. I don't have arbitrary like in groups, not like most people at least. I try to fight that sort of mentality as much as possible. Now, yes, I do judge, and I think that's important to a certain extent. I gauge deservingness of empathy to an extent. I think that's important. We can disagree on that. That's fine. But my primary focus, where I think I should actually send my energy, is people that have absolutely nothing and it's not their fault. That's a majority of them, by the way, regardless of the bullshit you've been told. People on the streets, children that are dying from fucking being sniped on purpose in Gaza. The same shit happening in Syria and other places in the world. I don't go, I'm from the United States. People in the United States are special. Like, that's just tribalism. That's stupidity. I don't think that way. And no one should. That won't change that it happens. And there's not really much I can do about it. But still, I'm explaining my personal values. So where I place my energy is based on, like, one, if it's an individual, it's going to be based on their character, whether or not they live a life that is about something more important than just themselves. Like, they're not greedy pieces of shit. They don't try to like form a world where their particular in group is like dominant and like fucking domineering over everyone else, like with like a freaking foot on their neck or something. But people that are in need, especially if they're innocent or I don't know them, I have a default of these people are in dire straits, and that's where my energy should be focused. And I judge people accordingly. What you talk about is a huge reflection of the kind of person you are. When there are people who are disappearing off the streets because they're homeless, for example, you know that. Let's just for the sake of argument say that you know that, and you choose to talk about you know what's really important? There are people out there with an agenda to replace white people. One, there's absolutely no evidence to back that. Two, you're not special. You don't get to be like, this is a white country. Do you know what the United States is about? Do you have any idea the values that makes the United States the United States? Because you're backward as fuck. Your patriotism is like a fake country that doesn't exist. Like, you want to live in like fucking Russia or some shit. And if that's the case, have at it. But you're not going to turn this country into that kind of shit, I promise you. It's not going to happen without a whole lot of fucking bloodshed. Again, not calling for civil war, but what I am saying is we have a problem where, one, our voice doesn't matter. More and more people are starting to realize this. We do not have a democracy. That's a fucking illusion. That's bullshit. This has been proven by Princeton University. It's not a thing. It's an illusion. It's designed to make you feel like you're part of the machine, but you're not. The wealthy are. Your government is bought off. That's the truth. And it would be even more irresponsible, in my opinion, to just not say that because it could lead to conflict. No. There's more types of violence than just direct, like shooting someone or beating the shit out of someone. And it harms people directly every single day that we do not have a democracy, that our voice does not make a fucking difference at all. That's what people have to fight for. I don't give a fuck about right, left, whatever. That is the first most important thing that everyone needs to focus on. The biggest, most massive single piece of legislation, in my opinion, that led us to the point where we are right now is, what the fuck was it called? This might take a moment. In fact, I might have to look it up. Citizens United. So legislation granting companies free speech right is not a specific law, but a series of Supreme Court decisions that have granted corporations First Amendment rights, with the most significant being the Citizens United versus FEC ruling in 2010, which allowed corporations to spend unlimited funds on political advocacy in elections. That's at least enough for me to get the point across. That right there is where everything fell the fuck apart, because what it does is, one, it's saying that money is free speech. That is absolutely fucking retarded. I don't care if you're on the left or you're on the right. You should fucking hate that. Because what it does is it means bribery is legal. A corporation that has billions of dollars to fucking throw around can essentially just bribe politicians, and that's what's happening right now. That's why we don't have a democracy. That's a big fucking deal. That's a far bigger deal than a lot of people realize. That is where, in my opinion, all of our attention needs to focus. Right, left, I don't care. Independents, Green Party, I don't give a shit. If our opinions, if our values, our stance on issues means absolutely nothing, as it is right now, we do not live in a democracy. It means that this is like a form of dictatorship. It's oligarchy, really. A select few billionaires are calling all of the fucking shots. So it's not complete, like fucking like a complete, like we have absolutely no say, because I do believe that, at least on some level, elections are legitimate. The problem is, just because you elect a representative, a congressman, or the president for that matter, does not mean they're going to represent you. And that's what we're seeing right now. There are numerous issues where even a vast majority of, like, Republicans, just for example, are against it, but they still pass it anyway. They don't give a fuck what people in general think. That has to change. And the only way that's going to change is if Citizens United gets fucking overturned. Corrupt ass Supreme Court officials or judges were responsible for that. and we have not had anything even remotely resembling a democracy or a republic. Although they're again, a republic is a form of democracy. But anyway, we don't have that. That's the problem. That instead of fucking like, so you're playing into the hands of the elites when instead of focusing on billionaires, which are the actual problem of like a 90% of all of our issues, they're doing exactly what they want you to do. Middle class blames the impoverished for their problems, and the impoverished blames the middle class for their problems. The problems are all at the top, guys. Clear as fucking day. Like, how much evidence needs to come forth to convince you of this? Like, wow. But yeah, where I was going there with the meaning thing. Yeah, I was going into my personal meaning. My focus is on the people who, one, are either innocent or I can't prove otherwise. So they're innocent by default, in my view. And two, in need. That should, when everything, like, when we're as wealthy as we are as a country, again, the wealthiest country in the history of the world, not just right now, ever. And there are people fucking dying in the streets, we have a problem. And I'm not going to pretend like I don't see it, or I'm not going to like not call out the bullshit for what it is and the obvious issue, the obvious like culprits, which are billionaires and the politicians that are bought off on both sides. That's the fucking problem. I'm not going to like refrain from calling that out because there's a possibility that shit might get bad, because what happens if you do? The same thing that has been happening. We've been losing freedoms and rights hand over fist. And like never before seen. Things are really bad right now. A lot worse than a lot of people realize. So you're silent because they want you to be afraid. So you fear the possibility of like a civil war or of like government tyranny, whatever. And then it makes it more likely, or at least the government tyranny part. That what are you going to wait till the point where like you can't even speak, like in fucking Russia? You're jailed because you happen to disagree with the state? Is that the fucking country you want to live in? All I can say is I would much rather die than just stand by like a coward while that happens. That's all I've got to say about that. And again, I've got like priorities here. A lot of people like to try to like to use their little in group, their tribalism, to like try to like separate me from people who otherwise I'm agree with almost on almost everything. In this particular instance, what I'm talking about is Christianity. So there are fake Christians and there are legitimate Christians. So I don't give a shit about denominations, all these little nitpicky things. And some people will try to like muddy the waters a little bit by like bringing up like different denominations, like these are the real ones. I don't care about that. All that matters to me is Jesus Christ. Factually, if you know anything about the fucking man, you cannot deny this. He was about as left wing as you can possibly get. And I don't say left wing as like this like stamp of like tribal shit. I mean left wing in terms of ideals about fucking caring about the poor and about like social justice, about not resorting to violence as like your first means of fucking communication. Like, this is what Jesus Christ stood for. The right wing are the opposite of these values in almost every fucking way. Those are not real Christians. I'm not going to not point out the obvious. So, that does not mean I have an issue with Christianity. That means that I have an issue with fake Christians. And I can tell you now, if I were a Christian, I would be having an even more of an issue than I do now, because these people claim to represent Christianity, but it's not about religion. It's not about Jesus Christ. It's about, again, using a very popular movement to gain traction and like use it like fascists did in Italy. And it's the exact same thing. It's not about Jesus Christ. It's not about belief. Donald Trump is not a Christian, obviously. I covered that in a recent video. Like, obviously, these people want to take your belief in Christianity and hijack that to gain power. They want to use it to make like for one, Christian nationalism is a fucking oxymoron. It cannot exist. It's not real. Christianity is about all human beings. Christianity is about worshiping God, not a nation. So just the very concept of trying to tie Christianity to fucking a nation is against Christianity itself. I covered that in the video. Like, so this is another problem. It's about like fake ass shit. And it needs to be called out for what it is, even if it offends people. Again, if you're silent and you just go, "Oh, I'm afraid bad things are going to happen because there's tensions high right now," then what happens? Then the current administration, the right, MAGA right, will use that to their advantage, just like they've been doing. That's why I've been saying for a while now, people have to quit being fucking silent. That is perceived as weakness. And in a way, it is. Your fear, they know that you have fear. They want you to be afraid. That way they can gain more and more power until you can't fight back. I, for one, am not going to let that happen. If I die in the process, so be it. At least I died for something more important than just fucking greed or fucking like being white or some stupid like backward version of what America means. Thank you for your time.